Greg and Liz live.
Greg and Liz
It's the
live.
Greg and Liz show. No, the Liz and Greg show.
It's the Liz and Greg show, or the Greg and Liz. Really, it's the Greg and Liz. Definitely. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Greg and Liz show. I don't know if we have anybody watching yet, but if you're out there watching, please go ahead and drop a comment in the comment area. We can see all of your comments.
You can
And
tell it's been a long day already, can't you, Liz? For
I
both
know.
of us.
And here I am, ladies and gentlemen, drum roll please. I'm with the fabulous, with the amazing 5-time New York Times best-selling author, ladies, gentlemen, and it's Greg Braden.
Well, until he gets here, I'm happy to have this conversation with you, Liz.
So
we'll hope he makes it to the studio.
I'm going to do the crowd applause.
And the crowd goes wild.
The crowd goes wild. Are you going wild out there? Woo! Oh, Lizzie Stobart says, yes, I finally get to see you live. And Rachel and Kathy and Ernesto and Lee and Sindel. And, well, that's it. Just those few people. No, it looks like we keep getting more and more people. So, hi, everybody. It's so wonderful. Oh, and Bill Van Horn is here. You know Bill.
I do know Bill, yeah.
You know Bill.
Bill, thank you for joining.
Yes, thank you all for joining. So we're going to have kind of a fun conversation today. And for those of you who might not know who I am, everyone knows who's Greg is, right? Everyone knows. Yes. I'm Liz, and I'm the creator and co-founder of Celebrate Your Life events. And we do all kinds of things at Celebrate Your Life events. And we're going to talk about that later. But today, Mr. Greg Braden, we are going to talk about human divinity, pure human divinity. So this is a topic that I know has been near and dear to your heart, and especially lately. This is something that you've been kind of downloading information about. And I'd love for you to share with everyone, like, what is it about pure human divinity and how we get locked up in fear and in angst when we're not really resonating with that part of ourselves. So take it away, Greg.
Well, first, let me just say it's good to see you. It's good to be with everyone. Liz, it's been a long day. This is a media day for me. And so I do back-to-back media. And when I saw yours come up on my list, I was really happy. I had a big smile on my face because I love our Celebrate Your Life community. And that's always an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you.
You know, the whole concept of divinity, Liz, I know it means different things to different people. Unfortunately, many people associate divinity with religion, and I can see why that would happen, because there are entire schools, religious schools, dedicated to divinity. I'm fascinated by this topic, and I think it's up for all of us, because when we look at the core definition of divinity, I'll just share that definition, a fraction of that definition. It simply means the ability to transcend perceived limitations. That is what divinity is really all about. The ability, so let's break this down. The ability to transcend. It means that we're not just trying to get by. We're not just trying to survive, but to become more than, to become greater than whatever challenges life has brought to our doorstep. So the ability to transcend and then perceived limitations. This is fascinating to me because it means they may not even be real. We may be entertaining limitations in our heart and in our mind that we've made up, that have been programmed. You know, you talked to Bruce Lipton recently, and he talks about the programs, the subconscious programs from the time we're in the womb until we're 7 years old. We're in the hypnagogic state. And that is where much of our sense of our identity, who we are, but even more than that, what we're capable of and what our limitations are. They are programmed during those periods of time. And then those programs are reinforced through education, through public school systems. They're always talking to us about our limitations. Rarely do they talk to us about our potential and the unknown potentials that are available to everyone. They're always telling us what we can't do, what we can't do. So the definition of divinity, if we can bear this in mind as we have this conversation, it is a part of all of us. It is the part of us that allows us to transcend perceived limitations, the limitations that have been programmed into our hearts and our minds since the time we were in the womb. This is important. This is important because we live in the world. And this is one of those beautiful places, Liz, where science and spirituality come together in a beautiful way, where the rubber meets the road. You know, the spirituality, what good are the teachings if they cannot help us in difficult times in our lives? And I know we're all going through a tough time in the world right now. It's been a tough year for a lot of people. Our spiritual practices, if they are valid, they've got to serve us in the bad times as well as the good times.
Right.
So divinity is a big part of that. All of us are being tested in terms of our divinity. Life is bringing images to our doorstep. It is bringing crises. It is bringing challenges to our doorstep that we must meet. We can't look away because they're there. Our divinity, when we embrace our divinity, it's a part of us that allows us to transcend those perceived limitations. When we talk about divinity, I'm just going to give some examples. It's something that is with us always. It's more than the thinking mind. It's more than the conscious mind. Conscious mind is important. Divinity is beyond that. It's more than the subconscious mind. I run into people all the time, Liz, that believe the subconscious, it's the ultimate, it's the end, it's where it's at. You know, you get a handle on the subconscious and you've got the mastery. It's important. It's a part of us. Divinity is beyond the subconscious. It is something that is called super conscious. And this is one of those places where science, spirituality, where quantum physics, biology, genetics all come together in a beautiful way, because that divinity is a part of us that doesn't live within us, that we access through our biology, through the DNA that's the antenna. Our DNA literally is an antenna that tunes us. It's all about frequency.
Okay.
Tunes us to places in this field that underlies all existence. So I'll just give you some examples. I had the opportunity to go to the Grammy Awards a few years ago. The first year, the only year actually, they were held in New York City. Usually they're in LA. And there were reasons they couldn't hold it in LA. It was in New York. Had the opportunity to meet some amazingly gifted and talented and creative musicians. And so I did a little impromptu journalism. And while I was saying hello and all the compliments, I would ask each of them the same question. I would say, where did that amazing piece of music that you were just awarded for, where did that come from? Or where did the words? I mean, some of the words were just the lyrics. I'm a writer, so I'm really big on lyrics. I said, where did those lyrics come from? Liz, you can't make this up. Everyone to a T, not one exception, every one of them gave me the same answer. And, they didn't talk among themselves to organize it. They all said to me this. They said, it didn't come from me. It came through me. They all said that. It came through me. And what that implies is that there is a part of us that does not reside within the confines of our flesh, of this physical body, that we access. Our intuition, we all know about that, and memories. These things don't live within us, that we access them. And the ability to bring through that music or those lyrics, that is an example of our divinity.
And allowing this to be divinely inspired. Allowing the music to be divinely inspired.
Our divinity is a part of us. It is timeless. It is always with us. Now, we can deny that we have divinity. And so some people won't use their divinity. They won't use the gifts and the skills that come through them as artists. Or, when somebody writes a book, you say, where did that book come from? It's something very similar. You get out of the way and you let that book, you let the ideas and the concepts come through you. Or the intuition that a mother senses with her child. That is a form of divinity as well, because it's deep intuition that is linked through phenomenon that are happening on a quantum level in the field. So we are born with, and again, nothing to do with religion, but I can see where religions would have come along and wrapped their rules and their dogma around this power, the ability to transcend, to become more, than the limitations that were programmed into us. That is where the religious aspect comes from.
That's
So
beautiful.
yeah, so what's happening, Liz, the bottom line is when we access our divinity, we are less vulnerable to control and less vulnerable
Mm,
to the ideas of other people that want to guide and direct our lives. And we all know, certainly, we're living in the world where systems are moving to centralize and control the way that we think. Our information is being
right.
regulated, it's being censored, what we believe, what we teach in the classroom and in the
Mhm,
textbooks.
mhm.
All of that are forms of control. And fear is a big part of this. And we all certainly know that we're being inundated on a daily basis. If you're plugged into the world of all at all, there's a million reasons for us to be afraid. Our fear keeps us from the power of our divinity. When we access our divinity, we're not vulnerable to the fear. We're not vulnerable. We're not we're not as susceptible to
Right,
falling prey to the ideas that are not good for us. So this comes about in terms of healthcare. It comes about certainly in terms of abundance, issues of abundance and finance. It all comes down to the way we think about ourselves.
right.
And the way we think about ourselves, if we are programmed with the limits, then we are not programmed to access the divine nature of who we are. And there is a battle. There is a battle right now for human divinity. There's a battle for our bodies, Liz, and we've seen this play out over the last few
Oh,
years. Here's
yes.
the reason. Here's the reason. Because those divine principles, the deep intuition, the imagination, the creativity that the authors and the musicians all say comes through me,
Mhm,
because
mhm,
it literally resides in this quantum field that underlies all of existence. We tune into that through our cells, through our biology, through our DNA.
mhm.
And when we compromise our cells and our biology and our DNA, what we're doing is we limit our ability to access our own divinity. We feel powerless. We feel like we're powerless victims in a world that we have no control
Yeah.
over. And
Well,
if we are powerless, it means we need a savior. If we're victims, we need a savior. And that
mm,
savior is being touted as technology.
yeah.
So the pure human
Something outside of
aspect.
ourselves rather than something within ourselves. We
That,
have you guys, I'm
yeah.
seeing all of your questions, I'm seeing all of your comments. Just so you know, we are live on 8 different platforms right now. We're live on all the Celebrate Your Life channels, YouTube, and also Greg Braden's page. So I am seeing all of your comments and questions, and there is a really good question in here. Yes, Michaela Brown, yes, you can watch the replay.
So Liz, I know I just said a lot of words before we go
Yeah,
any further.
she has a
Uh,
quick
and this is unscripted. It's very spontaneous. I'm just going
yes.
to ask before we go any further. What I just said, does it make sense to you?
That makes 100% sense to me because if I'm not identifying, because when I say when we say divinity, I also I have so many words for this for myself. So divinity, the truth of who I am, God, the God within me, all of this. And when I'm centered in that, when I'm centered in my own divinity, it's almost like nothing can shake that. Nothing can shake that because it's the truth of who you are, correct?
It is the truth of who you are. So now let's get real. Let's get
Okay.
real because I want to honor and serve our community. October 7th brought to our doorstep horrors and atrocities that our eyes were never meant to see, that our minds were never meant to consider, that our hearts were never meant to feel the emotions around that. And we all are challenged now in terms of how we respond. This is where divinity comes in, because the question is, what do we become in the presence of what we have just witnessed? What do we become? Do we allow those images and those atrocities to bring us to drive us to the lowest common denominator, to the primal instinct that makes us something that we are not. This is what you just mentioned. You say, what does it
Something
make us?
or
What do we
not.
become?
Right, right,
So
right.
how do we respond? Do we respond from the love of what we know is true and possible in our lives and our world? Doesn't mean we don't act, but are those actions born from the love of what we know is possible, or the fear of what happens if we do not? This
Wow.
is powerful, because there will be a time all of this is behind us. You and I will have a conversation. This
Yeah.
will be history. But here's what's important is, what have we become in that time? Have we allowed those events to drive us to explore the deep truth of who we are and our humanness, our pure humanness? Have we allowed those events to elicit our divinity to rise above? It doesn't change what happened. We still can respond, but are we responding based on love or based on fear? Because ultimately, that's a frequency, that's a vibration,
Or anger. Or
that's what
anger.
remains. With a year from now, 2 years from now, that's what remains. Have we succumbed to the influence of the media and to the opinions of others that elicits the darkest part of ourselves and makes us something we're not? Or do we allow that divinity to shine through and say, yes, from the love of what I know is possible, I will act in whatever way I act? Some people say it's splitting hairs. Two levels of what's happening here.
Mhm.
There's the physical level in this world where sometimes we have to fight. We all know that. There's the warrior within us. But then there is the spiritual element that drives that fight. And this is where we reap the benefits of the whatever it is that the world has brought to our doorstep, because we have to choose. Do we elevate ourselves into our most divine nature, or do we succumb to our animal nature? And I think that is up for everybody right now. Does that make sense if I say that to you?
Oh my gosh. Yes. And I'm watching all of your comments, which are just beautiful. And how do we Rabbi Tamara wrote on here, how do we defeat our enemy and yet not become them?
That's exactly the point. So it doesn't. Now, there was a time, World War II, Liz, there was a time that the ideology that led to the horrors of World War II could have been nipped in the bud, but that time was not valued. It wasn't recognized. People didn't act. They looked away, and it evolved into what became Nazi Germany, and we had to fight. There was a time when the events unfolding in the Middle East could have been solved through heartfelt dialogue and deep, deep listening.
Yes.
That hasn't happened. Now we're in it. The only way out of it is to go through it. And as we go through it, the question, what do we become in the presence of the horror and the atrocity? Our divinity is the answer to that. The way we access our divinity, we haven't got to that part yet. The deep truth of who we are is through our hearts rather than our minds, because the
Yeah.
mind, the left and the right brain of the mind, is where the ego is. But the heart does not have a left and a right brain. So when we move into our hearts, simply touching the heart center, drawing our awareness into I have to do this multiple times a day,
Mhm.
drawing the awareness into the heart center, slowing the breathing into the relaxation response, and now embracing whatever information is coming. Because we're not in the polarity of the brain where we're getting all of the good and the bad and the right and the wrong, success, failure, win, defeat, all of those
Yes.
things. In the heart, it allows us objectively to view what's happening in the world, or even a conversation in our own family. A lot of difficult conversations at the family dinner table are coming up right now because we're getting conflicting information and everybody thinks theirs is correct. So
Right.
when we begin those conversations from our heart, and this is the secret in our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions, and it's not make believe, 1991, the neural network was discovered in the human heart. 40,000 sensory neurons. They think, feel, They emote and they remember independently of the cranial brain. If we are locked into the ego loops of the left and the right brain to solve our problems, this is what makes us crazy, and this is what keeps us stuck in the patterns that have hurt us and caused us suffering in the past. When we move into our hearts, Liz, it doesn't change what's happening in the world so much. It changes how we respond to what's happening in the world. And it allows us, if we choose, to elevate ourselves
Yeah.
into an expression of our divine nature, where we're able to look, you don't look away, you look at it square on, and you identify what's happening, and you can discern, not judge, but discern what it is that is coming into your life, whether it's verbally from a partner or whether it's on CNN half a world away. We can discern. And now, how do we respond? Do we respond again from the love of what we know is possible, or do we succumb to the fear and the anger and the rage and the hate that is so easy to sink into? When we do that, look at what it makes us. It makes us into something, Liz, that is not our truest nature. So anybody watching,
Mm-hmm.
if you're exposed to information, and after experiencing that information, whether it's on network news or a conversation with somebody else, if you have become something as a result of that conversation that betrays what you know is your truest nature, it's not right, wrong, good, or bad. It's an indicator. It's telling you that you're being triggered, and the way to access you're being triggered through the mind, and the way to heal that so that you can be the best version of yourself and access your divine nature is to consider everything that you've heard or everything that you've seen, but you do it from the heart. It changed. Liz, there's some places where words
Game
fail and
changer.
you just have to experience it. It
Yeah.
changes the way that we feel. And I think collectively, now, none of this happens in a vacuum. We're barreling down the road on a timeline of history, and we are living the convergence of
Yeah.
so many cycles that our ancestors told us. They said, your world is going to change. You're living a convergence of these cycles. And it's within that context that we're seeing Israel, or we're seeing Yemen, or we're seeing the Congo, or we're seeing the horrors of what's happening on the streets of LA or Chicago that aren't reported so much, but they are horrible things.
Right.
All of that is the opportunity for us. What do we become in the presence of these things? What do we choose? Our divine nature is where we find our deepest levels of healing: physical, emotional, mental, psychological, and physiological healing. And I think that's what's up for all of us right now.
Big time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing all of your questions. Tony, I see your question on here. I'm going to Tony, I'm just going to make your question a little bit shorter. So Tony is asking, could you shed some light about divinity and courage when you're suffering from a terrible loss?
Absolutely.
And he
Look,
feels that the world is turning a
let me
blind eye.
just say this.
Okay.
In the days when it was possible for me to lead groups into the Chinese Tibetan plateau for
Mm,
26
okay.
days with the 12 monasteries, 2 nunneries, 26-day trips, we would sit in intimate dialogue with the monks and the nuns through the translators. My Tibetan is terrible, trust me. So it was all done through translators. And I would ask them the question very similar to what you're asking me right now. And it was a monk was the first that responded in a way that touched me so deeply. And what he said is this: he said, the deeper our hurt, the greater the capacity of our love we must discover to transcend that hurt. And I thought about that, because everyone has been hurt. You're hurt when you're a kid.
Right.
When somebody lies to you, betrays you, that's a level of hurt. And you find a way to get through that. But then as an adult, someone lies or betrays to you, that you're in an intimate relationship with, and that's a deeper level of hurt. You've got to find a greater capacity of love to embrace that hurt. And it's something that we would never do on our own unless we're given a reason to do it. The greater the level of hurt, the deeper the suffering, one of two things happen. We either succumb to the hurt because we believe we are powerless victims of our hurt. We either succumb to it. Some people will take their lives because the hurt is so great. Others will turn to chemicals and drugs and alcohol to anesthetize that hurt because they believe they're powerless to do anything about it. Ultimately, our greatest mastery, deepest spiritual mastery, is to go within and find the level, and we all have it. I can tell you, we all already have it. To find that level of love that allows us to transcend the hurt that we have found. And the more that we do that, we're all hurting right now. That means we're all being given an opportunity for maybe the deepest levels, the deepest capacity for love that we have ever known in our lives. Is this funny thing about humans, Liz, and I don't proclaim to understand it, but I certainly recognize it, is that for some reason, we are a species where we have to experience what we don't want before we recognize that we don't want it, rather than choosing what we do want and putting our time and love and energy into going after what we do want. So, collectively, we had to have World War I, and we said, oh, well, we don't want World War. And then we had another World War. He said, oh, we don't want World War. And we had a Holocaust. And we said, well, we don't want a Holocaust. And then generations forget. They forget our memory, conscious memory is short. Our genetic memory is, forever. So we have generations now, Liz, that were never taught about the horrors of the 20th century. It simply is not part of their knowledge base because our education system, public education, has failed them. They don't know how fragile peace really is. They don't know how fragile our security really is. And they cannot even imagine that one person would do to another person what happened in the plains of Israel on October 7th. They can't imagine that. So it's not part of their reality. They don't know that it never happened in the past. A lot of people still don't know that it happened because the information algorithms will not allow them to see the truth of what happened. The algorithms, community guidelines won't allow the images to come through. There are narratives that are being driven. So they don't know that these things have happened. And it's so hard to embrace that one human could ever do to another human what we're seeing happen. But where does it leave? Where does it leave us? Here we are barreling down the road toward the end of this cycle, building a new world. Liz, there's a new world in front of us. And what I know is this: your community, my community, your global family, and my global family. If you're on this planet right now, you're here to birth a new world. And what I know is this: I'm going to look you right in the eye and say this to you. I know that everyone listening, you don't want that new world to embody the hurt and the suffering that you and your ancestors had to live in the old world. We don't want to carry that hurt into the new world. This is generational hurt. And you've heard the buck stops with me.
Right.
Well, we can say something similar. The generational hurt and the suffering stops with me. We all have the power physically, even if our blood relatives did not suffer in the 20th century, the energetic field that holds that pain and suffering, we all have the opportunity now to transcend that. This is what divinity is really all about. The only way to transcend, if you are locked into repeating the hurt and the pain and the suffering that happened, you are reinforcing the chemicals in the body that hold that hurt, that perpetuate that field of fear. We don't want to go into the new world carrying that. And so yes, horrible things are happening in the world, and I'm not making an excuse for it. And there are times that we have to fight. And I think it's possible to fight and do what you need to do in the fight from a place of love rather than from a place of hate. It's a personal choice. And it is a deeply, it's a deeply spiritual principle. A
Wow.
lot of my spiritual friends don't like to have this conversation.
Yeah, and you and I have had many conversations offline about this very same topic and how right now we're in a challenging moment of time. We really are. We're in a very, very challenging time and
Yeah.
extremely, extremely divided. I'm going to
Well,
do just a quick.
I'm just, if our spiritual principles and the teachings are valid, they've got to work in the tough times as well as the good times. It's easy to be a
Mhm,
spiritual
mhm,
guru when
mhm.
everything, law of attraction, manifestation,
I
all of
know.
those things are valid. It's all good when times are good. When times are tough, if our teachings, if our practices fail us, then we have to say that they have failed us. We have to be honest about that. And that's the opportunity to let them go, bless them, let them go, and allow ourselves to be compelled to find a deeper truth and a deeper spirituality that will serve us so that we're not fooling ourselves. We don't
Yeah.
want to fool.
And
This isn't
and
about fair weather spirituality. This is about what's deep and honest and factual and true.
and this is and living it and having these
And
kinds of
living it, yeah.
conversations. And this is something that I do for a living. For those of you who don't know me, um, I have been creating spiritual. I've been basically taking people who are interested to be cocooned in spiritual conversation for anywhere from 2 to 3 days to 5 days. And I've been doing celebrate your life events for years now. And one of the main reasons why I do this is so we can have these conversations, so we can step away out of our everyday life and heal, so we can get answers to important life questions. And so just bear with me for a minute while I just offer all of you a program that we are doing. I went ahead and put the link in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and put the link on the screen as well. So we are doing a program on January 26th through the 29th in Arizona. That's where I'm based. So we're going to be here in Arizona. It's gorgeous here in January.
I'm
We
close to Arizona.
exactly. You're going to drive over.
I, I'm
So
I'm going to drive a big, beautiful black pickup truck, a Dodge Ram pickup
are you
truck
going to drive? Oh, that's so
over to
cool.
your state. I
It's
am because
only
I'm
8 hours.
yeah. Well, I'm bringing things with me. I can't take on the plane, but
Okay,
I'm going to
got it.
drive over.
So it's going to be Greg,
Yeah.
along with Dr. Bruce Lipton, Anita Morjani, and Shamini Jain. So I'm just offering this to all of you. If this conversation resonates with you, if you recognize the need to step out of your life, to get some spiritual education, to continue this conversation, to walk away with those tools that you need to assist in navigating your life, this is the event to come to. Super excited about this program, Greg,
Okay.
because we're bringing, I think, four of some of the greatest luminaries out there together in one program. And the four of them, this is what's interesting. And this in the 29 years I've been doing this, this is the first time this has happened, which I thought was really cool, is that the four teachers came to me and said, hey, we know that we've got a really great program and the world needs our information right now. Each teacher complements the other one. And would you be willing to put this program together for us?
Hmm.
And they've created it. I'm just the party planner. So
Well, are you saying we are your first?
yes, you're the first. In 29 years.
Well, I just want to say, Bruce Lipton, a lot of you know, Bruce and I have known each other. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary of knowing one another before we even had books.
Right.
And Anita Morjani and Shamini Jain, we're all dear friends. We during the time of COVID, we connected in community on Zoom because of the lockdowns. We weren't doing events, and we got to know one another on a deeper level and shared a lot of insights and information. And the idea of divinity, it's about having fun as well. I mean, these are big conversations. They can be heavy, and there's a side that is so joyous because when we unlock the deep truth of potentials within each of us that nobody's ever told us about. We don't learn about this. Most of our families don't know. It's not their fault. They just don't know. Society doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about these things. They're looking at, how to get more money and bigger cars and all that kind of thing. Uh, when we get together, what we found is that through our life experiences, we've each accessed and developed uh, pieces that are complementary to one another. So what we
Right.
wanted to do, we don't want to just be on a stage where one person gets up and sits down, another one gets up and sits down. So we have the opportunity to work together, where each of us gets to work with everyone else during these 4 days. That's why we wanted, and 4 nights, 4 days and four
4 days
nights.
and 4 nights.
We're going to make good use of this time together. And there is a joy and a lightness, Liz, that I've found that comes from awakening with practical tools and exercises to learn those tools and be confident in those tools and trust those tools in those 4 days, so that when we leave, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that we've got something that's going to work for us.
Right.
And together, our individual work, we complement one another. So many of you have seen Bruce and I on stage together before, but Anita and I do a lot of work together, actually, and we enjoy working together. And there's a section I'll work with Anita directly. There's a section where I work with Chamonix directly, and certainly with Bruce. But Bruce will work with Anita. Bruce will work with Chamonix. Chamonix will work with Bruce. Chamonix will work with me. So Liz, thank you for making it possible for us
Wow.
to
Well,
do this in
thank you for
the way
coming
that we're doing it.
to do it, because it's really such an honor to work with all four of you. And someone said it's sold out. Actually, just one of the seating levels is sold out, but we still have, I think, 9 tickets in another seating level, and we've still got some tickets in the other seating level. So make sure, if you're interested in joining us, to get your tickets as soon as you can, because we're getting there. People really, really want this program, so they're
Yeah.
coming from all over the world to be a part of it. And again, I do what I do because I love what happens in the space. I've been a witness, and it's been such an honor and a privilege to see thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have come through the Celebrate Your Life events doors for 29 years, and to actually see the transformation, the healing, the aha moments, the connections, the friends that are made. Like, people come by themselves and friends that are made.
Liz, one of the things that's
Yeah,
exciting to me is 3 of us are scientists.
right,
And Chamonix is a scientist, Bruce is a scientist, I'm a scientist, and Anita's work is based on scientific principles. All of us have crossed the traditional boundaries that have kept that science locked up into a box, and that have the opportunity to merge that science with the wisdom of 5,000 years of human experience through the indigenous people that I've studied with, certainly. And Bruce talks about this as well. And his experience, I don't want to speak for Bruce, but his experience with the indigenous people, Anita's direct experience with death and what that meant to her, what she learned from it, what her experience could mean in our lives. And the exercise that she leads us through is probably one of the most potent experiences that, as a teacher, I've ever experienced from another teacher. It's beyond a past life regression. It's beyond a guided meditation. It goes much deeper than that. So, for me, what I think is, the more we know, the more that science reveals about the human body, the more that we come to appreciate that we are a highly advanced, technologically sophisticated, literally a soft technology, not computer chips and wires and sensors and chemicals the way we typically think of technology. We are neurons and cell membranes and ion potentials moving across the cell walls. And to the best of our knowledge, Liz, we are the only form of life that can self-regulate all of these beautiful, magnificent, powerful, complex systems in our bodies. We're the only ones that can do that on demand when we choose. And when we access these systems to ignite deep states of intuition on demand, or deep states of immune response. I mean, who doesn't want a strong immune system right now? Or
right,
we awaken those longevity enzymes that we all have. And if you're dealing with longevity, it's more than living longer. It means you're healing on a very, very deep level, at a molecular level, is where this healing comes from. We self-regulate all of that and so much more. Super memory, super learning, super
right.
cognition, things, super recall, things that people typically don't consider, and it's not part of our programming, they are facets of our divinity. Here's the key, because divinity, the ability to transcend perceived human limitations.
Yeah.
When we awaken the deep truth of who we are, we have the tools to transcend what life brings to our doorstep. We live in a society, we live in a society where we're being told that we're powerless victims of a world we have no control over, and that we need something outside of ourselves. So we now are seeing the advent of technology being introduced inside of the human body, replacing our natural biology. This is where the term pure human comes from. My term, pure human. Pure human is when we embrace the deep truth of our potential, we feel less need to have that external technology. I'm not saying it's not useful. I'm saying we feel less need to bring it into our lives because we are the technology. Literally, we are the technology that we're looking for. So
Oh, we're powerful healing machines, as my
uh,
husband always says.
I love the way that man thinks.
He's like, we're powerful healing machines.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, everybody. Greg, you have spent so much time with us today. Have you all been just loving this conversation? Can I see a yes in the comments? We all just like so appreciate you spending this time and really going through and explaining these, because these have been really difficult moments for all of us.
Are you
So,
telling me we're finished? We're
yes,
winding
yes,
down?
we're like almost 45
I didn't
minutes.
know.
Yeah. I know it goes by so
I know
quickly.
it does.
But I just want to share with you one more time. I'll go ahead and drop the link in the chat. We are doing a retreat, a 4-day retreat. And if you love this conversation, you're absolutely going to love this event, because it's Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, Anita Morjani, and Shamini Jain. So come and join us. Come and join us, because we're going to be doing all kinds of experiential exercises. They're going to lead you through meditations. There's panel discussions. This is a program where you'll actually get to ask questions. You'll get a lot of your important life questions answered at this program.
Great music with special guests.
Exactly. Who knows who else might show up? We'll find out.
Well, Liz, I didn't know we were winding down now. And I want to say to
Oh,
everyone listening, I want to thank everyone, whether you're seeing us now or if you see it in the replay. Thanks for clicking the button that brings us together and sharing a little bit of your day with us today. This is a really, really powerful world that we're living in right now. There's a lot of confusion out there, a lot of things. And what I want to say to my family is when you have a difficult conversation, or you see something or you hear something that's difficult, ask yourself, what have I become in the presence of this information? And if the answer to that is something that betrays your truest nature, if you become something that you don't want to be or you don't like, that opens the door to the inquiry and to the questions of your deepest levels of spirituality. And there are many avenues to explore. And I want you just to know that all of these things that are happening in the world are driving us to be the best version of ourselves so we can create the best world possible if we have the wisdom to recognize that. So I want to thank you all for all you're doing to be the best version of yourself. Liz, thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your afternoon
and
with
thank you
me
for being
today.
present. And thank all of you
Yeah.
for joining us. That was a mic drop moment. That was beautiful, Greg. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Liz. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you at our event the end of January. Come be with us. Bye. Mwah.